Ever heard of the Pink Shark Kingdom? It's this tiny, peaceful place, mostly known for its bubblegum-colored coral reefs. And at its heart was King Pink Shark. Now, don't let the name fool you. He wasn't some fearsome predator. He was a 2-foot-tall shark who preferred walking on his fins, wearing a tiny crown, and sipping sea kelp smoothies. Life was good, too good. One morning, while staring out from his balcony, a thought hit him like a rogue wave. What if someone wants our smoothies? What if an enemy is out there, lurking in the deep, jealous of our perfectly pink paradise? This wasn't just a fleeting thought. It burrowed into his mind. He pictured giant krakens, armies of grumpy crabs, maybe even humans with nets. The fear was real. A kingdom built on peace is a beautiful thing, but a defenseless kingdom is a tragedy waiting to happen. He knew he had to do something. The era of just vibing was over. It was time to get serious. His first royal decree? We need an upgrade. He gathered his smartest sea cucumber engineers and pufferfish strategists. The mission: transform their laid-back community into a formidable force. The first order of business was the sea itself. We are creatures of the ocean, he declared. Our strength must begin on the waves. And so, the Great Pink Navy was born. They didn't build clunky, grey battleships, oh no. They hollowed out giant Nautilus shells, fitting them with powerful squid ink cannons and jellyfish sting torpedoes. Sleek, fast, and surprisingly intimidating, his fleet of pink-hued vessels soon patrolled the kingdom's borders. But the king's paranoia, or let's call it strategic foresight, didn't stop at the surface. He'd heard tales of threats from above. Flying fish were one thing, but what about other things? So, he commissioned Project Skyray. His engineers, inspired by the graceful manta rays, designed the world's first aquatic jet fighters. These weren't jets as we know them. They were biomechanical marvels, propelled by controlled, high-pressure water streams that allowed them to soar through the water and even breach into the air for short, stunning bursts. Piloted by the bravest swordfish, the Skyray Squadron became the swift, silent guardians of the skies above and the waters below. The king, pacing on his 2 fins, then looked toward the land, the sandy shores and rocky outcrops of his kingdom. An enemy could attack from any direction. He knew they needed a ground force. Thus began the development of their armored division. They repurposed giant, impenetrable sea turtle shells, outfitting them with crab-claw pincers and wheels made of hardened coral. These turtle tanks were slow but unstoppable, a crawling fortress on the seabed. And for air defense, they trained electric eels to launch focused high-voltage charges at anything that flew too close, creating a crackling, invisible shield over the capital city. With a powerful navy ruling the waves, jet fighters dominating the currents, and an armored force securing the land, the Pink Shark Kingdom was transformed. King Pink Shark stood on his balcony once more, but this time, he wasn't filled with anxiety. He saw the coordinated patrols, the gleaming turtle tanks, the Skyrays practicing their aerial maneuvers. He had built one of the strongest, most unique armies the ocean had ever seen. He could finally relax, enjoy his sea kelp smoothie, and know that his pink paradise was safe. And the best part, no enemy ever came. But as King Pink Shark would say, it's better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war. Okay, picture this. A world just beneath the waves, but not like any you've ever seen. In this underwater kingdom, there are 2 great rulers, both walking around on 2 feet, just like us. In one corner, we have the magnificent, the glorious King Pink Shark, and in the other, the cunning, the sly King Blue Shark. For years, their kingdoms lived in a delicate balance, a fragile peace held together by ancient treaties and a shared love for shiny objects. But one morning, the peace was shattered. King Pink Shark woke up, stretched his fins, and went to admire his most prized possession, the legendary sea sparkle diamonds. These weren't just any jewels. They were said to hold the light of 1,000 sunsets. But when he opened his royal vault, it was empty. A single blue fin scale was left behind. There was only one shark it could belong to. King Blue Shark, sound of a royal proclamation horn. A wave of fury, pinker than his own skin, washed over King Pink Shark. He stole my diamonds. He roared, his voice echoing through the coral castles. This treachery will not stand. To arms. We marched to the Blue Kingdom. This was no ordinary underwater squabble. King Pink Shark wasn't just sending a few grumpy crabs over. Oh no. He unleashed his entire military might. Imagine this. Sleek, shark-shaped jet fighters, modified to scream through the water, leaving trails of bubbles in their wake. They were the first to strike. A shimmering pink arrow aimed at the heart of the Blue Kingdom. Sound of underwater jets whooshing, light explosions. Following the air or, well, water assault was the Navy. Massive whale-sized battleships armed with sonic cannons moved silently through the deep. And on the seafloor, the ground trembled. King Pink Shark's ultimate weapon, a legion of heavy-duty tanks, driven by tough-as-nails hammerhead sharks, their treads churning up sand and shell as they rolled relentlessly forward. The Pink Army was a terrifying, beautiful, and frankly, kind of absurd sight. King Blue Shark, caught completely off guard, scrambled his defenses. His army of swordfish cavalry charged, their noses like gleaming lances. Giant octopuses released clouds of ink, trying to create chaos and confusion. They fought bravely, but how do you fight a tank with a swordfish? How do you stop a jet with a cloud of ink? The blue defenses crumbled, fortress after fortress falling to the unstoppable pink tide. Music becomes more triumphant. Finally, King Pink Shark's tanks rolled right up to King Blue Shark's palace. The doors burst open and enstrode the victorious king. There, on a velvet cushion in the middle of the throne room, were the sea sparkle diamonds. King Blue Shark cowered on his throne, defeated. King Pink Shark marched forward, his eyes fixed on the prize. He scooped up the glittering diamonds, a sense of justice and victory swelling in his chest. His kingdom was avenged, his treasure reclaimed. And then, in the most kingly, most generous, and most Pink Shark move of all time, he turned to his reflection in a grand palace mirror. He held the diamonds up high, a huge grin spreading across his face, and declared, "A gift. From me to me." He then proudly placed the diamonds back into a travel-sized vault he brought with him. After all that, the war, the jets, the tanks ... It was all just an extreme level, kingdom versus kingdom style shopping trip to get his own stuff back. And King Pink Shark wouldn't have had it any other way. Music swells and fades out with a final, cha-ching sound effect.
Sound of gentle ocean waves, perhaps with a hint of magical chimes. All right, gather round, let me tell you a story from the deepest, most glittery parts of the ocean. This isn't just any underwater tale. This is the story of King Caspian, the Blue Shark King. Now, when you picture a Shark King, you're probably thinking of a giant, toothy beast, right? Well, Caspian was different. He had 2 feet, just like you and me, and a crown made of the rarest sea gems that sat perfectly between his fins. His kingdom, the grand city of Aquamarina, was a marvel of coral castles and glowing anemone streetlights. Caspian had everything a king could want: a loyal court of barracudas, a treasury filled with pearls the size of coconuts, and the respect of every creature from the tiniest shrimp to the mightiest whale. But he was lonely. Every evening, he'd stand on his balcony staring out at the vast, dark ocean and sigh a big, bubbly sigh. His royal advisors, a fussy old lobster and a wise sea turtle, kept presenting him with potential queens. Duchess Dolphin, Princess Pufferfish, Lady Lionfish. You name it, they were all beautiful, powerful, and boring. None of them made his heart do that little flip-flop thing. One day, feeling particularly gloomy, Caspian decided to ditch his royal duties and take a walk through the city's marketplace. He pulled a kelp hood over his head to disguise himself. The market was bustling. Crabs were selling polished shells, squids were juggling ink pots, and the noise was deafening. And then he saw her. Across the crowded square in the kitchens of the royal castle was a shark he'd never seen before. She was a pink shark, and she also impossibly had 2 feet. Her scales shimmered like 1,000 tiny sunsets. Even covered in a fine dusting of sea flour, she was a servant, a slave really. Brought to the castle from a far-off reef, her job was to scrub giant clamshell pots from dawn till dusk. But she wasn't scrubbing. She was humming a melody, a sad but beautiful tune. And as she worked, she was using her foot to draw a perfect spiraling seashell in the sand on the floor. Caspian was frozen. It was like a lightning bolt, a very wet lightning bolt had struck him. He watched her for what felt like hours. He saw how she shared her meager lunch with a baby seahorse. He saw the kindness in her eyes when she spoke to the other kitchen staff. He learned her name was Coral. He wasn't just intrigued, he was completely head over fins in love. He rushed back to the palace, his heart pounding a rhythm against his ribs. "I've found her," he announced to his bewildered advisors. "I've found my queen." The court was in an uproar. A servant?
A slave? The lobster advisor shrieked, his claws clacking in protest.
"Your Majesty, it's unthinkable. It's against all tradition. You must marry royalty." But Caspian wouldn't listen. For the first time in his life, he didn't care about tradition or what his court thought. He knew what his heart wanted. He walked back to the kitchens, his crown on his head, his royal cape swirling behind him. The entire kitchen staff froze, bowing low, all except Coral, who just stared, her eyes wide with shock. He walked right up to her, knelt down on one knee, which is tricky to do underwater, by the way, and took her flour-dusted hand. "Coral," he said, his voice echoing in the sudden silence, "I have searched the 7 seas for a heart as kind and a spirit as beautiful as yours. I don't care that you're not a princess. To me, you are the greatest treasure in the ocean. Will you marry me?" Coral looked from the king to his crown to her own rough hands and then back to his sincere, loving eyes. A single, perfect, pearl-like tear rolled down her cheek and she whispered, "Yes." And so they were married. The wedding was the grandest event the ocean had ever seen. Every creature from every corner of the sea came to celebrate. Coral, no longer in servant's rags but in a gown woven from pure moonlight on water, was the most radiant queen Aquamarina had ever known. Together, King Caspian and Queen Coral ruled not just with power, but with a kindness and love that changed their kingdom forever. And they proved that true royalty isn't about bloodlines or crowns, but about the love you have in your heart.
Sound of gentle ocean waves, bubbling, and a soft, whimsical melody begins. All right, gather round, because you're not going to believe this story. It takes place deep, deep, deep down in the ocean, in a kingdom so sparkly and blue it would make a sapphire jealous. This was the kingdom of Aquamarina, and it was ruled by a king unlike any other. His name? King Blue. And King Blue was a shark. Now, hold on. Before you picture a giant, scary, Jaws theme song kind of shark, let me stop you right there. King Blue wasn't your average shark. For starters, he was about 2 feet tall, tiny, and more importantly, he didn't have fins like the other sharks. Nope, King Blue had 2 fully formed, wobbly little feet. He would waddle around his coral castle, his crown slightly askew, greeting all his fishy subjects. He was a kind king, a just king, but on this particular day, he was a very, very hungry king. Stomach rumbling sound effect, he'd had plankton smoothies for breakfast, sea cucumber sandwiches for lunch. It was all fine, but his royal tummy was rumbling for something more, something different. He swam up to his castle's periscope, which magically peered out of the water and onto the human world above. He watched the land dwellers, and that's when he saw it. A person, sitting on the beach, holding a flat, round, colorful disc. They took a bite, and their eyes lit up with pure joy. A string of something cheesy stretched from their mouth. "What is that?" King Blue whispered, his little shark eyes wide with wonder. He zoomed in the periscope. On the box, he saw 4 letters, Pizza. Pizza, he declared. "I, King Blue, king of the sharks, wielder of feet, want pizza." But how? How could a 2-foot-tall shark with feet, living at the bottom of the ocean, get a pizza? He couldn't exactly use a delivery app. So, he did what any resourceful king would do. He summoned his fastest messenger, a speedy swordfish named Zippy. He scribbled a note on a waterproof seaweed scroll, tied a pouch of precious sea pearls to it, and gave Zippy his mission. Go to the surface, find this pizza, and bring it back to your king. Zippy shot off like a torpedo. Hours passed. King Blue paced his throne room, his little feet making soft thump sounds on the sandy floor. Just as he was about to give up hope, Zippy returned, carefully balancing a strange, square, cardboard box on his pointy nose. It was here. It was really here. King Blue excitedly opened the box. The smell hit him first: warm bread, tangy tomato, savory cheese. It was the most incredible thing he had ever smelled. Inside was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. A perfect circle of cheesy, saucy, pepperoni-dotted glory. He took his first bite. Magical sparkling sound, followed by a satisfying sigh. It was an explosion of flavor. It was crunchy, and soft, and cheesy, and just perfect. He gobbled down one slice, then another, until the entire pizza was gone. He sat back on his throne, patting his full tummy, a blissful smile on his sharky face. This was the best food in the entire world, sea or land.
And in that moment, a brilliant idea sparked in his mind. This joy, this incredible, delicious happiness. It was too good to keep to himself. He couldn't just have pizza for himself. He had to share it. So, the very next day, a royal decree was sent out. King Blue, using his surprisingly nimble feet, started a new royal project. He transformed a giant, dormant volcano into a massive, underwater pizza oven. He taught his crab chefs how to knead dough with their claws. He had octopuses master the art of spreading the tomato sauce perfectly with their 8 arms. He discovered a special kind of glowing sea kelp that tasted exactly like mozzarella when baked. He called it King Blue's Royal Pies. Soon, the entire ocean was buzzing. Fish, dolphins, whales, and even grumpy-looking anglerfish lined up for miles. They had never tasted anything like it. The kingdom of Aquamarina, once known for its beautiful coral, was now famous for having the best pizza in the entire world. But King Blue didn't stop there. He thought about the people on the land who had shown him this magical food. He wanted to give back. Using his royal magic, he created thousands and thousands of pizzas. He placed each one in a magical, watertight bubble and sent them floating up to the surface. All across the world, people on beaches and boats looked up to see an amazing sight. A flotilla of shimmering bubbles, each containing a perfect, hot, delicious pizza, gently drifting towards them. It was a gift from the mysterious deep. And from that day forward, whenever someone found a mysterious pizza floating to shore, they knew. They knew that somewhere, deep beneath the waves, a 2-foot-tall shark with feet was smiling, happy to share the food that everyone, on land or in the sea, had come to love. Music swells and then fades out with a final, gentle bubble pop sound.
Have you ever heard the tale of the King Blue shark? No, not the kind you see on nature documentaries, swimming deep in the ocean. This was King Blue, a magnificent royal shark who, strangely enough, walked on 2 feet. He ruled over our vast sandy kingdom by the sea, and his subjects, the crabs, the seagulls, and all the coastal critters, adored him. But one day, a strange gloom fell over the kingdom. King Blue was sick, not with a shark cold or a fin ache, but with a deep, unshakable sadness. The royal chefs brought him the finest delicacies the ocean had to offer. Plankton platters, exquisite kelp salads, even sushi made by the most skilled octopus chefs. But King Blue just sighed, shaking his regal head. Nothing tasted right. He felt weak, his vibrant blue skin looking a little pale. The whole kingdom was worried. Determined to shake off this melancholy, the king decided to take a walk along the edge of his kingdom, where the sand meets the world of humans. He waddled along the shoreline, his 2 feet leaving funny, webbed prints in the wet sand. The sun was warm, the waves were gentle, but the emptiness inside him remained. And then, he saw it. And more importantly, he smelled it. A group of humans were gathered around a colorful blanket, laughing and enjoying their lunch. They held these strange, round constructions in their hands. A warm, savory aroma, unlike anything he'd ever encountered, drifted on the sea breeze and tickled his sharky nostrils. He watched, mesmerized, as they took huge, happy bites. A fluffy bun, a juicy-looking patty, some sort of green leaf, and a slice of bright red fruit. What is that wondrous creation? He wondered. A little girl, noticing the king staring, smiled and shouted, "It's a burger! It's yummy! A burger!" The word echoed in his mind. Burger! A newfound energy surged through him. He turned and marched straight back to his sandcastle palace. "Chef," he boomed, his voice stronger than it had been in weeks. "I have a royal decree." The royal crab chef scurried forward, snapping his claws in attention. "Forget the kelp. Forget the plankton," King Blue declared. "I want a burger." The kitchen was thrown into chaos. A burger? What was a burger? The chef had never even heard of it. But the king was determined. He described what he saw in great detail. The toasted buns like 2 halves of a seashell, the savory patty grilled to perfection. They used a special seafloor volcanic vent for that, the crisp sea lettuce and the juicy sea tomatoes. After much trial and error, the chef presented the very first Royal Ocean burger. King Blue looked at it, his eyes wide. He cautiously took a bite. Sound of a satisfying, magical crunch. Oh, my gosh, it was perfection. The combination of flavors exploded in his mouth. The savory, the fresh, the soft, the crunchy. It was everything he never knew he needed. He gobbled it down in seconds and immediately ordered another. And another. Color returned to his cheeks, his energy came flooding back. The burger hadn't just filled his stomach. It had healed his soul. He wasn't just a king anymore. He was a king who had discovered the meaning of life. And it was a cheeseburger. But King Blue was a generous ruler. This overwhelming joy, this culinary enlightenment, was too good to keep to himself. He couldn't let his subjects, or even the humans who had inadvertently saved him, live without experiencing this magic. So, he issued his greatest decree yet. He commanded his chefs to work day and night, transforming the royal kitchens into a massive burger factory. They grilled thousands upon thousands of patties. They toasted mountains of buns. They gathered fields of sea lettuce. And then, in a grand gesture of gratitude and joy, King Blue Shark stood at the edge of his kingdom and launched the Great Burger Giveaway. He gave burgers to his fishy subjects, who nibbled on them curiously. He gave them to the humans on the beach, who were stunned to be handed a perfect burger by a two-footed shark. Laughter and delight filled the air. From that day on, King Blue wasn't just known as the king who walked on 2 feet. He was known as the Burger King of the Sea. The monarch who discovered that sometimes, the cure for a heavy heart isn't found in a royal treasure chest, but between 2 fluffy buns. Music swells and then fades out with the sound of a gentle wave. Sound of gentle ocean waves, maybe a distant seagull. Have you ever looked out your window and seen something that just completely changed your life? Well, that's exactly what happened to Queenie, the one and only queen pink shark of the shimmering seas. Now, Queenie wasn't your average shark. For one, she had 2 feet, perfect for strolling along the seabed and admiring her coral gardens. She was a respected queen, known for her wisdom, her kindness, and her frankly fabulous pink hue. But one afternoon, as she peered through the periscope of her royal submarine palace, she saw something that made her fishy heart skip a beat. Sound of bicycle bell dinging. On the sun-drenched boardwalk above the waves, humans were whizzing by on these incredible 2-wheeled contraptions. They were called bicycles. They looked so free, so fast, the wind in their hair, big smiles on their faces. A thought sparked in Queenie's mind, a thought so bold, so audacious, it almost made her gills flutter. "I want to do that," she whispered to her royal advisor, a very serious crab named Sheldon. Sheldon, polishing his shell with a piece of kelp, nearly dropped it. "Your Majesty? A bicycle? But ... we're underwater. You're a shark." With all due respect, it's highly illogical. But Queenie's mind was made up. "Sheldon, logic is just a suggestion. Get me a bicycle." So, a custom-built, waterproof, sandproof bicycle was commissioned. It was a magnificent thing, shimmering pink just like her, with seashell-shaped reflectors and a coral handlebar. But wanting to ride and actually riding were 2 very different things. Sound of wobbling, a comical splash and bubbles. Queenie's first few attempts were, let's say, a disaster. She wobbled. She weaved. She fell over, sending up clouds of sand. She crashed into a particularly squishy sea cucumber, who was very gracious about it, all things considered. The other sea creatures would peek out from behind rocks, giggling into their fins. Sheldon just shook his head, muttering about the dignity of the crown. "I can't do it," Queenie cried, sitting on a rock, her beautiful bike lying in a heap. Just then, an old sea turtle named Titus, who had seen more tides than anyone could count, slowly paddled over. "Patience, Your Majesty," he said in his slow, creaky voice. "You didn't become queen in a day. You don't master the bicycle in a day either. Look ahead, not at your feet. Feel the flow of the water, don't fight it." His words resonated. Queenie got back on. She looked ahead at the distant kelp forest. She pushed off, and this time, instead of fighting, she let her body move with the current. She wobbled. But she didn't fall. A few more pushes, and she was gliding. It was the most exhilarating feeling in the world. From that day on, Queenie practiced relentlessly. Before the sun rose, she was out there, pedaling through the silent canyons. She learned to do sharp turns around rock formations, to pop a wheelie over sleeping starfish, and to skid to a perfect stop right in front of her palace doors. She wasn't just riding anymore. She was dancing with the bicycle. She was a professional. Upbeat, exciting music starts. One day, a flyer, printed on a giant waterproof leaf, floated through the kingdom. It announced the annual Tour de Trench, the biggest underwater bicycle race in the ocean. The grand prize, the legendary Golden Conch Trophy. "I'm entering," Queenie announced. This time, Sheldon didn't object. He just handed her a polished helmet made from a nautilus shell. The day of the race was electric. Barracudas on sleek, silver bikes, octopuses on custom 8-pedal machines, and even a team of speedy swordfish were all lined up. And there, in the middle of it all, was Queenie, calm and focused on her shimmering pink bike. Sound of a loud starting horn, frantic pedaling, and cheering crowds. The race was a blur of fins and bubbles. Queenie was incredible. She drafted behind a giant manta ray on the straightaways, navigated the treacherous jellyfish junction with nimble grace, and pedaled up the steep Mount Mariana with a power no one knew she had. In the final stretch, it was neck and neck between her and a notoriously arrogant marlin named Spike. Spike tried to bump her off the path, but Queenie, remembering Titus's words, used the current to swerve and then shot forward with a final burst of royal energy. She crossed the finish line a full fin length ahead. Sound of huge cheers, triumphant music, the crowd went wild. Queen Pink Shark, the shark who dared to dream of riding a bike, was the new champion. As they placed the golden conch in her hands, she didn't just see a trophy. She saw the wobbles, the falls, the laughter, and the quiet determination. She looked out at her cheering subjects and held the trophy high. She proved that it doesn't matter if you're a shark, a queen, or just have a crazy dream. If you look ahead, practice with patience, and aren't afraid to fall a few times, you can do anything. Even win a bicycle race at the bottom of the ocean.
Sound of bubbling water and a loud, metallic crash. Folks, gather round, because what I'm about to tell you is a story so bizarre, so terrifying, you won't believe it's true. Deep within the sterile, white walls of a top-secret genetics lab, scientists were playing God. They weren't just splicing genes. They were rewriting the very code of nature. Genes. Their creation. They were rewriting the very code of nature. But the world would soon know it by a different name. The pink predator. They had taken the DNA of the ocean's most feared hunter, the great white shark, and fused it with something else. Something bipedal. The result was a monstrosity of science, a massive, 7-foot-tall shark, but with 2 powerful muscular legs. And its skin? A grotesque, almost bubblegum pink hue, a sickening mockery of its deadly nature. One stormy night, during a catastrophic power failure, Subject 734 saw its chance. It shattered its containment unit, a whirlwind of reinforced glass and steel. Alarms blared, but it was too late. It tasted freedom for the first time, and with it, an insatiable primal hunger. Guided by an instinct it shouldn't have possessed, it headed for the one place that felt like home: the ocean. It emerged onto the golden sands of Laguna Beach, just as the sun was setting. Families were packing up, surfers catching their last waves. The sight was surreal. A giant 2-legged pink shark, walking out of the brush like a tourist from hell. Legged pink shark, walking out of the brush like a tourist from hell. Was it a prank? A movie promotion? The confusion turned to sheer terror when it let out a guttural roar. A sound that was part shark, part beast, and charged. Sound of chaotic screaming and splashing. It was a nightmare unleashed. It bounded across the sand with terrifying speed, its massive jaws snapping, its dead, black eyes filled with nothing but predatory rage. It snatched a beachgoer, then another, wading into the shallows with its victims. Panic erupted. People scrambled for their lives, their screams swallowed by the crashing waves. Within minutes, the sirens wailed. Within minutes, police cruisers swarmed the parking lot. Officers armed with standard-issue pistols took positions. They opened fire, but the bullets might as well have been pebbles. They ricocheted off its thick, rubbery pink hide. The creature, enraged by the stinging bites, turned its attention from the beach to the police. It charged the cruiser, flipping it over as if it were a child's toy. It tore through the police line, a pink juggernaut of pure destruction. Sound of helicopter blades whirring closer. Then came the cavalry from the sky. A news helicopter and a police chopper circled overhead, their searchlights pinning the creature on the blood-soaked sand. The beast looked up, its primitive brain processing the new threat. In a move that defied all logic and physics, it crouched, its powerful leg muscles coiling like immense springs. And then it leaped. It launched itself 20, 30 feet into the air, a pink missile of muscle and teeth. Its jaws clamped down on the landing skid of the police helicopter. The pilot screamed, the chopper lurched violently. For a terrifying moment, the creature just hung there, a monstrous pendulum swinging beneath the struggling aircraft. With a final, furious wrench, it tore the skid clean off, and the helicopter spiraled out of control, pendulum swinging crashing into the waves with a deafening explosion. With a final sound of an explosion and fizzling, the pink predator landed back on the beach, seemingly unfazed. It scanned the chaos it had created. Its gaze fell upon the marina. There, a sleek, powerful speedboat was bobbing by the dock, keys still in the ignition, left by someone fleeing in terror. In a final, chilling display of uncanny intelligence, the creature waded over, clumsy but determined, and clambered aboard. It somehow managed to slam the throttle forward. The last thing anyone saw was the speedboat rocketing away from the shore, a massive, bipedal pink shark at the helm, disappearing into the darkness. It was heading for the shadowy silhouette of Catalina Island on the horizon. The beast wasn't just a mindless monster. The beast wasn't just a mindless monster. And now, it had its own island fortress. The Laguna Beach incident wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. The pink predator was loose, and its reign of terror had only just begun.
Have you ever seen a shark do kung fu? No, I'm not talking about a movie. I'm talking about Barry, the world's one and only two-footed, land-walking pink shark. Yeah, you heard that right. Barry wasn't like the other sharks in his family. While they were busy chasing fish and, being sharks, Barry was on the shore, balancing on his two surprisingly sturdy fins. Mimicking the moves he saw in old martial arts movies, he'd sneak watch through the windows of a beachside arcade. He'd practice his kicks, his chops, his legendary fin of fury. He got good. Really good. He could crack a coconut with a single tail whip. One sunny afternoon, while practicing his crane stance on a pier, he saw something that changed his life. A little kid's ice cream cone went splat on the ground. The kid started to cry. A moment later, a gust of wind blew a woman's hat right off her head and into the water. Then he saw a guy struggling to carry a huge stack of boxes, about to topple over. Barry's big, sharky heart ached. He saw sadness, frustration, little everyday problems everywhere. The humans, they needed help. And in that moment, new dreams sparked in Barry's mind. It wasn't enough to be a kung fu master. He wanted to be more. He wanted to be a hero. He wanted to be Superman. Well, a shark version, at least. He imagined himself with a big S on his chest for shark, obviously, and a flowing red cape. He wouldn't just be Barry the kung fu shark. He'd be Super Shark, protector of the innocent. So, he got to work. He found a discarded red beach towel and, using his teeth, carefully fashioned it into a magnificent cape. It was a bit sandy, but it fluttered heroically in the sea breeze. He stood tall, puffed out his chest, and declared to a nearby group of confused seagulls, "Fear not, citizens. Super Shark is here." His transformation was complete. He wasn't just a shark with a dream anymore. The asterisk was asterisk Superman. His first mission? He spotted a cat stuck up in a palm tree. With a mighty leap fueled by years of kung fu training, he sprang up the trunk, gently scooped the kitty into his fins, and landed softly on the ground, presenting the purring furball to its grateful owner. Next, he saw a purse snatcher running down the boardwalk. "Unhand that tote bag, you fiend." Barry yelled. He used his tidal wave takedown, a move he'd invented himself, and tripped the thief, sending the purse flying safely back to its owner. He was a natural, but Barry knew that some problems were bigger than lost cats and stolen purses. He needed a better vantage point. He needed to fly. Now, sharks can't fly, right? Wrong. Barry was no ordinary shark. With a running start, his red cape billowing behind him, he leaped off the tallest cliff overlooking the city. He focused all his chi, all his kung fu energy, and he didn't exactly fly. It was more of a falling with style.
But it worked. He glided over the skyscrapers, his keen shark eyes scanning the streets below. He was a pink, caped blur against the sunset. A guardian. A hero. A legend in the making, constantly searching for anyone in need. For any attacker he could stop with his unique brand of marine martial arts. The city had a new protector, and his name was Super Shark.